I mean, it was a disaster for all of us to understand this. Sincerely, I was telling myself 100 times that, oh my God, if this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this cannot happen to them.
Grief from those who knew members of a Brampton family killed in yesterday's plane crash in Ethiopia. 2 young girls, their parents and grandparents died in the crash on their way to take a family vacation. We'll take you to Brampton in just a bit, but first, here's Cass Rusi with more on the other lives lost, the investigation into the crash, and Canada's response.
I now invite all representatives to stand and observe a minute of silence in honour of the victims.
At UN headquarters in New York today, a moment of silence for the 157 people killed in the Ethiopian Airlines crash. 21 of the victims were members of the United Nations.
Our colleagues were women and men, junior professionals and seasoned officials, hailing from all corners of the globe.
18 Canadians were killed when the plane crashed just 6 minutes after takeoff. Among them, Ottawa native Jessica Haiba, who worked for the UN and recently was reassigned to Somalia's capital. Today, one of her closest friends says Haiba was excited to get back to work.
Jessie is a brave, brave person. She's a superhero in herself. She's an incredible mother. She loved very deeply. She loved her family. She loved her friends. She is a humanitarian at heart, and both the United Nations and Canada have lost one of their best humanitarians.
At the crash site, heavy machinery was brought in to dig out pieces of the wreckage, while searchers continue to recover bodies. It's still not known what caused the plane to go down in clear weather, but with the recovery of 2 black boxes, officials hope to get some clues. Both Air Canada and WestJet say they remain confident in the Boeing plane. Still, the Air Canada Pilots Association is calling on Ottawa to take proactive action to ensure the safety of Canadians.
It's very important not to jump to any conclusions about any possible causes. It's important for us to get to the bottom of it. We have the black boxes. It's important for us to determine the cause and then to take the necessary action, and we will do so.
Cass Rusi, CBC News, Toronto.
And of the 18 Canadian lives lost, 6 came from one Brampton family. Farah Morelli is live at Chinguacousy Secondary School, where one of the victims attended. Farah, 2 of those family members, young girls.
That's right. One of those young girls was Ashka Dixit. She went to school here in Brampton. She was just 14 years old. She and her sister Anushka were traveling with their parents, Prerit and Kosha. They were on a trip during March break to Kenya, along with their grandparents as well. The family of 6 were on board this flight from Addis Ababa to Nairobi that crashed. No one, of course, survived that crash, and the entire family is now dead. Today, I had a chance to speak to a man who's known this family for more than a decade. His name is Pramesh Nandi. He teaches music here in Brampton and taught Ashka since she was just a little girl. He teaches classical Indian music. Here's how he reacted to the news of her death.
When I was telling them, I was like, and my daughter was like, what happened, what happened? I said, they are no more. And literally my daughter, my wife, everybody started crying loudly, and it was difficult for me to handle them too. Very, very shocking, very, very shocking.
Nandi described Ashka as a promising music student with a beautiful voice. He says he saw the family just last month when she came over for lessons. He didn't expect that would be the last time he would ever see them. He, like many people, has a lot of unanswered questions tonight, mainly how this could happen to an entire family. And the community here in Brampton is mourning together. The flag at the city of Brampton is at half-mast tonight in honor of this family that was killed entirely on this flight.
Yes, the entire community, in fact, the entire country feeling this today. Thank you for that, Farah. So, should travelers feel safe aboard Boeing 737's MAX 8s? I put that question to an aviation expert today. His answer coming up for us at 6:30. A 32-year-old man is dead after a daylight shooting outside a boxing gym in Mississauga. Police are still looking for the shooters after finding what they believe was the getaway car. Ali Hassan joins us live from the scene now with what investigators are saying tonight. Ali.
Well, Dwight, they're telling me that they're going to be here for a long time. Just take a look at this crime scene here. The shooting happened almost 8 hours ago, and pretty much most of this block is still taped off. That tells us that there is lots of evidence in that parking lot. This is where a 32-year-old man was shot multiple times. He managed to muster the strength to go inside that boxing gym, however, to ask for help. But as we know, he eventually succumbed to his injuries. Now, there are lots of eyewitnesses to this shooting. This did happen, after all, at around 11:15 in the morning. What they have to say is going to be key in the search for this suspect. Here's Peel Police with more.
We have multiple witnesses that were in the area. It goes without saying that with regards to the busyness of Dundas Street East, there will be video dash cams, businesses in the area that we will be trying to get additional video documentation from.
There's actually a second crime scene that police believe to be associated with this one. As you mentioned, a vehicle was found just around the corner from here. It was found shortly after the shooting was reported. It was found abandoned and on fire. Now, Peel Regional Police are investigating its connection, of course, and whether or not this may be the suspect's vehicle. So far, we don't have any further information or suspect description at this time. We just know that he fled eastbound on Dundas Street East here. Yeah, the search is on tonight for the suspect involved in Peel Region's 4th homicide of 2019. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Ali.
I have no relationship whatsoever with the Premier or the Ford family.
The province has named a new OPP commissioner after Ron Tavener withdrew his name last week following months of controversy about his friendship with Premier Doug Ford. Current Deputy Chief for York Regional Police Thomas Carrick will take on the role April 8th, and as Lisa Shing reports, the announcement was plagued by the government's previous choice for the job.
York Regional Police has been my home, my passion, and my family for 29 years.
Thomas Carrick says it was the most difficult decision he's ever made to leave his current job as Deputy Chief for the new role of OPP Commissioner.
Guns and gangs and human trafficking, illicit drugs, traffic safety.
But today, his priorities for Ontario's largest police force were overshadowed by the controversy that preceded his appointment.
I have no relationship whatsoever with the Premier or the Ford family. I have not met the Premier before.
The first choice for commissioner was a close friend of Doug Ford. Toronto Police Superintendent Ron Tavener was hired after the qualifications for the job were lowered. And because the OPP can investigate the government, critics perceived his hiring as a conflict of interest.
There is no question that the police remain independent.
Today's announcement comes 5 days after Tavener gave up the job because of the controversy. Carrick didn't even apply, and there are no details about how he was chosen.
There were a number of candidates who were assessed, who were reviewed.
I was approached by the Deputy Minister of Community Safety, Mario Di Tommaso.
Di Tommaso was involved in the hiring of Tavener and firing of OPP Deputy Commissioner Brad Blair, who was vocal about Tavener's appointment and called Di Tommaso's involvement a conflict of interest.
I can assure you this decision was made by Cabinet.
Even though Tavener has returned to his Toronto police job and a new commissioner has been named, there are still some loose ends that need to be tied up. The Integrity Commissioner still has a report. There's still an ongoing court case over whether the Ombudsman should be forced to investigate Ron Tavener's hiring, and the NDP is still calling for a public inquiry. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
I 100% believed he died because of his work. And because of how he was treated there and neglected.
Still ahead, while the top brass of the OPP is figured out, we look into the mental health supports for frontline officers. 3 OPP members took their lives last year. Coming up, what the OPP is and isn't doing about it.
We want to look after our people. We want to have the right things there for them. Constantly working on what else can be done. What do we change? What do we do?
A teacher with the Toronto District School Board has been arrested for sexual assault. Toronto police say 36-year-old Brian Ross met with a 15-year-old girl 2 years ago, drove her to his home to talk about school issues, and there she was sexually assaulted. Ross taught at Marshall McLuhan Secondary from 2006 to 2016 and at Senator O'Connor College School from 2016 to this year. Police say he was also involved in coaching some sports. He will be in court in May. The province announced funding for school boards today to help them deal with a surge in students with autism.
For each new student entering the school system, school boards will receive an average of $12,300 per student. This funding will allow school boards to make sure there are proper supports available during the transition from therapy to school.
The news comes after the province announced cuts to government-funded therapy for children with autism. More than 8,000 children are currently using that therapy, and some parents say without it, their children will have to re-enter the school system. Now, the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario is quick to point out the $12,000 to help school boards is nothing new.
For this minister to say we're committing to $3 billion again next year in funding, that's the same amount as this year. School boards are already struggling to find millions of dollars to provide the supports for spec ed students and children with autism.
The government says it will also fully subsidize an autism qualification course for teachers, and all 72 boards will now have an after-school program for those students. Colette is on March break. Nick is here with us. And Nick, I feel a warm-up out there.
Yeah, well, you're feeling right, Dwight. Temperatures headed to the double digits. It's going to take a couple days to get here, but spring seems to be in the air. Right now, temperatures sitting just at that zero mark across the GTA. This coming with a little bit of cloud cover, and also in the last hour or so, some flurries across the region. It looks a little worse on the radar than what it actually is, but we're seeing some light snow showers across the region as winds sort of come out of the northwest, and that's driving some of the moisture off of the lakes. However, this is all changing. We're watching a system that's moving in from the southwest again over Colorado. You might remember I talked about this last week with the storm system that hit the GTA on Saturday night, Sunday. Same type of thing, except this is going to bring with it warmer temperatures. You notice the warm front itself kind of goes further up to the north. That's going to drive in temperatures from the south that are going to be into the double digits. Now, it's only going to last a day, but it'll be a taste of some spring weather for us anyway. Now, we'll time that system out for you coming up in just a bit. For tonight, though, you can expect temperatures to be down to -7. A few flurries through the evening hours, then clearing. Still some gusty winds. Those will lighten up, though. Wind chills of about -14. Tomorrow, +3 degrees and sunshine. Winds lightening up as well. And then the warm-up starts toward midweek. We'll have full details on that coming up in just a bit. Dwight.
Thank you, Nick.
You bet.
Some heavy metal for some good news for drivers and anyone living near the so-called Spaghetti Junction from the city of Toronto. 1 lane each way on Kipling between Bloor and Dundas, now open. That's 12 hours earlier than planned. Crews worked straight through the weekend to remove 2 bridges. It's all part of the 6 Points redesign.
It creates this massive waste that we try to mitigate.
Some restaurants have started to push plastic to the side. Could a provincial ban on single-use plastics be on the way? More on that after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
A group of Vaughan residents want to put a stop to a developer's plan to expand a local sports complex. The proposal would eat up city-owned parkland and include a private school. Greg Ross has the details.
Parkland is not for sale in any community, or at least it shouldn't be.
Laura Ronaldo is the head of a community organization working to stop a proposed expansion to the sports village in Vaughan. It's currently part of 13 hectares of city-owned parkland. The 4-rink facility caters to local hockey leagues.
Our concern is that it is a for-profit development, so it belongs on commercial/industrial property. It doesn't belong in a residential area, least of all the park.
We reached out to the Mantena group of companies which operates the sports village. Owner Tony Firiato told the CBC the hub will support education, local culture and performing and visual arts, research, sports, digital media technology programming, and wellness and health. Included in the proposal is a new 5,000-seat multi-use arena. But at least one city councillor wonders how accessible all of this will be to the local community.
The certain things are benefiting him and his private school concept that he wants and his large arena.
The Mantena Group says part of the proposal is to expand a school they already operate on city-owned land.
So these portables are servicing the Hill Academy, which is a private sports school.
I can't imagine that these are all Vaughan athletes that are going to be attending the school. There's dorms for 100 from what we've been told to date. This is not a community benefit. It's not going to be for the local community.
Residents say they are worried that a project of this size could create many more problems.
You can't imagine that something this big is going to come in and it's not going to cause traffic. We already have so much in the area that we're dealing with right now.
Vaughan Mayor Maurizio Bevilacqua says the proposal still needs approval from City Council. He says they plan to listen to community feedback before making any decision, and he says no project gets approved in the city of Vaughan unless it's in the public's interest. Greg Ross, CBC News, Vaughan.
Out with plastic and in with the paper. Some restaurants have already made that call. Now, the Ontario government is floating an idea that could see a complete ban on single-use plastics. As Adrian Chung explains, the plan falls in line with waste reduction efforts already happening right across the world.
Sunday brunch madness, and the bartenders are running at full speed to fill the glasses. What they won't be putting in any drink are plastic straws.
Not a lot of people use straws, and if they don't use the straws and it comes with it, they just toss off to the side, toss it on the floor, and it creates this massive waste that we try to mitigate.
More and more restaurants and bars in Toronto are catching on to the no plastic trend, and they're now using paper bags, paper takeout containers, and of course, paper straws that are all recyclable. Now, the province is looking to back the idea. It's weighing the possibility of banning all single-use plastics like bags and bottles. Each person in Ontario generated nearly 1 ton of waste last year, and much of that garbage ends up in landfills and beyond.
These get into the water. Eventually, they break down into little pieces, which we call microplastics. Those end up inside the bodies of fish and turtles and everything else. And eventually, they're in our bodies. And emerging science is telling us that we're full of microplastics now, and that's all because of this single-use plastics.
The province's idea is in the early stages of consultation. The opposition NDP is ready to launch its own bill on eliminating plastics next week, seemingly one of the few ideas that's bipartisan at Queen's Park.
This was an idea that had already been floated by the Liberals, to be honest with you, but there was a lack of decisive action. And I think that's exactly what we need to see here. It needs to be ambitious. It needs to be decisive.
People working in the restaurant industry say there's been a sea change in customers' expectations.
You notice it most from the guests. They'll say things like, wow, it's great that you have a paper straw. You have plastic, I don't want to take it. No, we have paper for you. So it's just sort of been a win-win-win.
And in the dining room, not too many feel like they're missing out.
Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it was just really convenient, and now people understand, like, by using those single-use plastics, it's like affecting the environment heavily.
Hopefully all restaurants and in general people, consumers, can support the idea and move towards being more sustainable.
There's no clear timeline on when a legislated ban could happen, but for many restaurants, they've already started their own. Adrian Chung, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, a holy relic is discovered in a Toronto church. More on the mystery behind the stone with ties to World War I, coming up. Today, Britain celebrates 70 years of the Commonwealth, and Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, visited Canada House in London to mark the day. Kayla Hounsell was there.
The annual Commonwealth Day service takes place each year here at Westminster Abbey. It is a day set aside for celebrating the shared values of the Commonwealth: peace, equality, and diversity. All of the main members of the royal family are here: the Queen, Prince Charles and Camilla, Prince William and Kate, and Prince Harry and Meghan. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex paid a visit to Canada House earlier today, where they spent some time chatting with young Canadians who are living here in London and throughout the United Kingdom and working in a variety of sectors, from fashion and the arts to business and academia. They were also treated to a performance by some Canadian throat singers, and of course the youngest Canadians stole the show: some Canadian children teaching Harry and Meghan how to make maple taffy on snow. The royals were also given some gifts for their own child. They're expecting a baby this spring, and they were given some mittens and a hat from the Hudson's Bay Company, as well as a onesie with a maple leaf on the front and some Manitoba mucklucks. Now, some people think Harry and Meghan's visit to Canada House on Commonwealth Day today is a sign of things to come.
The fact that Harry and Meghan are coming here, I think, would indicate that at some point in the future they're certainly thinking about coming to Canada. I mean, not least because, of course, the Duchess lived in Toronto, and the link between Canada and the royal family is incredibly strong. In fact, the Queen has not been to as many countries outside Britain as Canada.
And there are now 53 member countries in the Commonwealth. They have a combined population of 2.4 billion people, and more than 60% of them are under the age of 30, which is perhaps part of the reason we see the royal family placing so much emphasis on engagement with youth. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, London.
And how the pilots reacted to those states, and whether or not they were coordinated, whether or not there was some confusion in the cockpit.
After the break, we return to our top story: the tragic crash of an Ethiopian Airlines plane. 18 Canadians are among the dead, many of them from right here in the GTA. Should travelers feel safe on these planes? An aviation expert weighs in next.
It is important for the cause of the accident to be known before any decisions are taken.
Several countries have grounded 737 MAX 8 planes, the model involved in yesterday's deadly crash. But today, Canada's transportation minister said they'll be keeping them in the air. Now, yesterday's crash comes in the wake of an eerily similar incident involving the same type of plane. In October, an aircraft plunged into the Java Sea minutes after taking off from Indonesia, killing 189 people. Paul Walsh is the chair of the Aerospace Engineering Department at Ryerson University. And I spoke to him about whether people should be concerned about their safety on these planes. But first, I asked him how this plane differs from its former model.
Basically, it's an upgrade on the original platform. So they're looking at greater range, greater efficiency, maybe a larger capacity above the 737.
There are many questions in people's minds now. It's all what happened here. What's the biggest question you have as somebody who's in this field?
What I'm be asking at this point is what did the aircrew know? I mean, what kind of instructions did they receive? What kind of training did they receive for this particular aircraft? And if there was a bulletin issued in the past, did they receive the proper information and the proper training?
And there was something specific about this plane where a bulletin was sent out at one point.
Yes.
And what was that?
From my understanding, this was a bulletin issued by the manufacturer about circumstances that the aircrew should engage in, or the kind of procedures that they should follow if there is an error of the angle of attack sensor. Basically recognizing that a fault has occurred and basically follow a certain set of procedures to correct the fault and basically restore a regular flight to the aircraft.
And we don't know that's what happened here, but that's one of the things they will be looking
Possibly.
at. For sure. Yeah. We hear a lot of people talking today, they're like, you know what? I don't want to get on this plane now. After this has happened, should people be worried about flying on this particular aircraft?
You know, personally, I don't think they should be worried for the simple reason that this variation of this aircraft does a flight several hundreds or maybe several thousand times a day. And in all that time, we've hardly heard of any accident whatsoever. So I think it's actually a fairly safe aircraft. I would not be concerned.
We hear people talk all the time, you know, you're safer to travel in your car than you're safer on a plane than you are in a car sometimes. Does that still hold true?
Absolutely. Well, let's face it, you're much less risk on a commercial airline flight than you are just driving in your car on the highway.
Investigators have now recovered the black box and the cockpit recorder at the crash site. What's next? Well, where do they begin as they piece this whole tragedy together to try to figure out what happened here?
I think probably the first step is obviously to extract the data off the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, and look at basically the information that the aircraft was producing, the state of the engines, the state of the flight control surfaces, and how the pilots reacted to those states, and whether or not they were coordinated, whether or not there was some confusion in the cockpit. Perhaps that led to some unfortunate circumstances.
Appreciate your time, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now you can find the very latest on the Ethiopian airline crash online. Just head to cbcnews.ca or download the CBC News app.
I'm extremely grateful and deeply honored by the confidence placed in me by the provincial government and the Ministry of Community Safety.
Thomas Karik will become the new commissioner for the Ontario Provincial Police. The former deputy chief with York Regional Police has served with the force for almost 30 years. The government says Karik has been appointed to a 3-year term and will start in April. The OPP is the second largest police service in Canada. Since 1989, 35 active or retired members have taken their own lives. Only 23 have died in the line of duty over the same time. That makes suicide a bigger risk than dangerous criminals. Mark Kelly, co-host of The Fifth Estate, has more on what the OPP is and isn't doing to help its members.
As turmoil over who will lead the OPP continues to swirl over the force, so does the specter of suicide. Last summer, 3 OPP officers died by suicide in 3 weeks. That sparked an investigation by the Fifth Estate. Did the OPP do enough to protect its officers? That's a question the acting commissioner still can't answer.
We're taking apart every one of those files individually, case by case, to see what it was, what impacts what. Is there a connection? Is there a culture? You know, the Ontario Provincial Police, like any other police agency, is a paramilitary organization. That needs to kind of change in time too.
38-year-old Joshua DeBach was one of those 3 to die last summer. He had mounting job stress after transferring to a forensics unit that exposed him to suicides and autopsies. His wife Lon says she has no doubt his job pushed him to his death.
I 100% believe he died because of his work and because of how he was treated there and neglected.
Psychologist Lara Sigurdsson treats many OPP officers struggling with job stress. She says they'll keep quiet about it to keep their jobs.
So we can have all the programs in the world. If no one's going to, if the climate doesn't even allow me to say, struggling over here, it's useless.
More OPP officers have died by suicide in the past 30 years than in the line of duty.
But my investigation shows they are failing, and the results are frankly tragic.
7 years ago, Ontario's Ombudsman Andre Marin urged the OPP to establish a program that focuses strictly on suicide prevention. The OPP still doesn't have one. And since that recommendation was made, the Fifth Estate has learned 12 more OPP officers, both active and retired, have died by suicide. The acting commissioner says mental health programs have been put in place, but concedes more needs to be done.
We want to look after our people. We want to have the right things there for them. Constantly working on what else can be done. What do we change? What do we do?
Lon DeBach feels her husband didn't get the psychological support he needed in the days leading up to his suicide.
Do you feel still like you're still part of the OPP family?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because I have questions about and concerns about circumstances around my husband's death that I've been asking since September. And I have gotten no answers yet.
I cannot give you a good answer, and if anything, I need to apologize to her.
Lon says the OPP failed her family, and she's losing hope someone will be held accountable for her husband's death. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Toronto.
You can watch the full Fifth Estate investigation online. Just head to cbc.ca/fifth. Toronto Police cracking down on risky drivers this March break. The Zero Tolerance campaign starts today and focuses on the top 4 bad driving behaviors.
Factors to crashes that we know drivers are doing that we're asking for a real change on. And that's around speeding, distracted driving, impaired driving, and aggressive driving. So we know those are the big 4 factors that we see more and more and more contribute to injuries that hurt people.
Officers will also keep a close eye on vulnerable road users. 41 pedestrians were killed in Toronto last year. More than half were 55 or older. Police will also hold several educational days this week on pedestrian safety. The traffic blitz ends on March 17. And as the melt continues, more kids are going to be out there running around enjoying some of this warmer weather. So got to look out for them too, Nick.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Dwight. You know, the warm-up is on its way. The first step towards spring is turning the clocks forward. The second step is a day of double-digit temperatures, and we're going to get that midweek. Right now, though, we're still dealing with snow flurries across the GTA. This is some colder winds blow in off the lakes, and it looks a little worse on the radar than what it is, but light snow showers across the region at this point. Could slick up the roads a little bit over the next couple of hours. It is clearing out, however. What we're watching is another system that is developing again down around the Colorado, New Mexico area, and this system here is going to move into the GTA over the next couple of days. The key with this, though, is this warm front. Anything south of that is getting into that milder air, and to the north is in the air that we're in right now, the slightly cooler air. As we move through Wednesday, we'll see a few showers poking into the GTA, and Wednesday night through Thursday, the temperatures actually climb a little bit, and by Thursday, they're going to peak in the double digits. Now, it'll come with a few rain showers across the region, about 10 to 15 millimeters, but temperatures will be, as promised, double digits. It doesn't last long, though. Things start to clear out by the time we hit Friday. Over the next 24 to 36 hours, here's what we can expect. Sunshine for tomorrow, and that'll last all the way through until tomorrow night. By Wednesday, as I mentioned, a few showers, and the bulk of the rain coming with the warmer temperatures as we move through Thursday. Wind-wise, it's been pretty gusty today, about 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. Those winds are going to stick around over the next little while, next few hours, and they'll slowly start to peter out. By tomorrow morning, winds about 20 to 30 kilometers per hour, about 20 kilometers per hour by the time we hit tomorrow afternoon, and that coming with temperatures that are slowly warming as well. 0 degrees right now as we move through tonight. Under clear skies, we're expecting temperatures to drop down to -8 degrees with a wind chill of -14 initially until the winds sort of peter out. By tomorrow afternoon, though, highs to about 3-4 degrees across the region. This comes with straight sunny skies, and the temperatures only go up from there as we move through the next couple of days. 3 degrees tomorrow and sunshine. Wednesday, as I mentioned, we're looking at a few spotty showers moving in along the edge of that warm front, but it's really Thursday where most of the winds, or rather the rain comes in. It is going to be a windy day with this system, but it'll come with 11 degrees, 10 to 15 millimeters rain in the forecast. Then in the wake of it, could see a few wet flurries, but the good news in all of this, there's not a single day that has a daytime high below 0. Dwight.
We like that, but we will have to talk about that one on Friday when
Yeah,
you get down here. Thank you, buddy.
You bet.
Federal government is investing $100 million in steel and aluminum manufacturing. It's to help businesses cope with tariffs imposed by the U.S. government last year. The announcement came earlier today at Nova Steel in Hamilton.
And this money will help Canadian SMEs that are involved in transforming the steel made by hardworking employees right here at Nova Steel. So right behind me, you work hard day in and day out, and we want to make sure that the steel that you produce benefits those companies and that those jobs remain here in Canada as well.
The tariffs were imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump last year on national security grounds. It led to Canada imposing its own retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., all of this causing supply chain disruptions and extra costs for consumers on both sides of the border. The money announced today will go to small and medium-sized steel and aluminum producers right across the country to help them protect jobs and stay competitive. Police in most Canadian cities released the names of homicide victims, but Montreal withholds all names, while Edmonton is the only major city to selectively identify victims. Now, with the new police chief for the city, some families of victims are hoping for an end to that practice. Jennifer Johnson explains why.
For the past 2 years, the Edmonton Police Service has taken a selective approach to naming homicide victims. In 2017 and again last year, they withheld the names of 40% of the people who were murdered. For example, last month, police here charged a man with the 2016 murder of a 6-month-old baby. Police named him, but refused to identify the victim, stating, quote, "It served no investigative purpose." The infant's mother said police never consulted her.
They never asked me. They just said that there will be a media release, and that was Valentine's Day they said that. And then they messaged me today and said, oh, just so you know, there's been a media release.
Hours later, Brittany Pigeon willingly made her baby's name and photos public. We surveyed police forces in Canada's 10 most populated cities. First, we found out how many homicides occurred last year. Then we asked how many names were withheld. 8 of the 10 cities released all victims' names. A spokesperson with Vancouver Police said, "We never want to live in a society where someone can be murdered in secret." Montreal Police, as you can see here, did not release any names, and among this group, only Edmonton withheld some names. Now, Edmonton has a new police chief, so the issue is being revisited.
I appreciate the role that the media has to identify and to let people know in relation to the citizens know of what's going on. And I assure you that I will look at that. And we're not always going to be happy with the outcome, but at the end of the day, is if there's a need to know and a right to know, then I assure you that's what I'm going to look into and look at it from that perspective.
McPhee has hired a nonprofit group from Saskatchewan to look into the issue over the next months, so there could be changes coming. Janice Johnson, CBC News, Edmonton.
This is a pivotal week in Britain. A series of crucial votes on the fate of Brexit begins tomorrow. Prime Minister Theresa May talks with the EU are reportedly deadlocked. That means she could fail to get the changes she needs for a deal to pass in the House of Commons. Some are calling it a confidence vote. Britain is due to leave the European Union in 18 days. Lawmakers could still decide to delay Brexit or leave without a deal. There are just 18 days left until Britain is set to leave the European Union, and the prospect of pulling out with no agreement has many British industries wrestling with uncertainty. The situation is especially dire for lamb producers who may have to slaughter millions of animals that no one wants. Thomas Dagler explains.
Welcome to North Stoke, England. Population 72 humans and several hundred sheep. There are about to be many, many more just at this farm, an extra 1,500 or more, because it is lambing season, as it is every year right around this time here in Britain. These ewes, female sheep, are about to give birth to their little baby lambs. Those lambs are normally farmed for their meat, much of which is exported to the European mainland, except this year there is a big question mark over the entire British lamb industry, and that is because of Brexit. Britain is set to leave the European Union at the end of the month, but there's still no divorce deal ratified, meaning British lamb farmers are worried about deep tariffs being imposed at the end of the month, perhaps even additional sanitary checks imposed, which could cause chaos in the industry.
These lambs that are coming out that we're producing now, we still don't know what the market for them is. We don't know if anyone's going to want them. We've already spent the money getting them this far. Farmers might have to try and sell them or slaughter them. You know, that would be the worst case scenario.
This little lamb was born premature about a week ago. Normally it could be processed for its meat, and that could be exported to the European mainland within 6 months' time. But this year, because of Brexit, there's a big question mark over that meat, over the whole industry. That's unless Britain and the EU can agree to the terms of a deal before the end of the month. Thomas Dagler, CBC News, North Stoke, England.
She said, "Oh, you got to get rid of this lamp," and then lifting it up, I thought it was the base of the lamp, and then it wasn't the base, and she said, "What's this?"
This was an altar stone from a medieval Roman Catholic church found inside a Forest Hill Anglican church. How the mystery of the stone was solved, next.
This weather update is brought to you by Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, the best location for your next spring break getaway in Quebec City.
A mysterious holy relic discovered in a Toronto church inspired a priest and his parishioners to hunt for the truth. Their detective work ended in a churchyard thousands of kilometers away. Philip Lee Shannock explains.
Here, in one of the city's oldest churches, lay a mystery waiting to be solved. It sat hidden in plain sight for decades. The church rector says it all started when a staff member asked about a lamp in his office.
And she said, oh, you got to get rid of this lamp. And then lifting it up, I thought it was the base of the lamp, and then it wasn't the base. And she said, what's this? And I immediately recognized what it was.
Walker knew it was an altar stone from a Catholic church, upon which the sacraments of communion are prepared. Writing on the back, Les Nouvelles Églises, Belgium, 1915, with the initials FGS, provided a big clue.
Just southwest of Ypres in 1915, and La Nouvelle Église was shelled, and it was a medieval church that was bombed out, and the Canadian troops were there.
The church was destroyed as battles raged during the First World War in Flanders, where about 60,000 Canadians fell. Walker thinks a Canadian Army chaplain, Frederick George Scott from Montreal, must have gone into the ruins of the church to retrieve the holy relic. But a piece of the puzzle remains. How did this altar stone brought from Belgium to Canada by a Quebec priest end up here in this Toronto church? Canon Walker has his theories. That it came here with one of Scott's sons, who retired to Toronto and was a volunteer at the church.
Put it in the rector's office here, and someone put a lamp on it 60 years ago, and there it's been ever since.
Grace Church on the Hill is adorned with stained glass tributes to the soldiers from the parish who died in Flanders fields. But Walker says the stone didn't belong here.
Maybe we should give it back to the people to whom it belongs.
In November, as part of ceremonies marking the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War, the altar stone was repatriated to Les Nouvelles Églises, while school children sang O Canada. It now occupies a place of honor in the rebuilt church.
It's not hidden under a lamp.
Philip Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
War is a universal language. I know a renegade soldier when I see one.
The first female-led Marvel film conquered the box office this weekend, where it sits in the record books when it comes to all female-fronted films. Coming up next.
Space invasion.
control it.
Marvel Studios has a record-setting debut on their hands. Captain Marvel raked in more than $455 million globally during its opening weekend. According to studio estimates, that makes it the 6th largest worldwide opening ever. For more, we turn to Yelena Adzik. Okay, we had Black Panther setting records with people of color starring. Now we have a female-led superhero movie setting records. Hopefully Hollywood is getting it.
Do you think?
Let's talk about this record.
Yeah, listen, Dwight, it is really significant because mostly we're also talking about the record that you said, but the fact that now this is the movie that is the highest grossing debut of all time for a female-led film. So now that means that it surpasses Beauty and the Beast. And Brie Larson, I know you loved her in Room.
Yes, I did.
She got an Academy Award for her acting in that movie. And yeah, she obviously has some serious range. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a look at it right now. Dwight, I have to tell you, whenever I want to show a clip from a superhero film, it is tough because there's just a lot of boom, blah, blah, explosions and that sort of thing. And it's hard.
I love this clip. I love Grandma, I'm not gonna lie.
All right, well, I'm gonna give you one with Samuel L. Jackson, where they have a pretty humorous conversation of getting to know each other because, of course, our character is from another planet. Have a listen.
Name a detail so bizarre a scroll could never fabricate it.
A toast is cut diagonally, I can't eat it. You didn't need that, did you?
No, I didn't, but I enjoyed it.
Okay, your turn. Prove you're not a scroll.
Okay, she's not a scroll.
I can't wait to see this movie. But anyway, yeah.
Fun fact, I can't eat toast when it's cut diagonally either.
Are you serious? Oh, hilarious. Okay, so that was a positive. Let's get to some of the negative stuff. This film was actually attacked online in a way that you wouldn't expect.
Well, I know, because you'd expect for people to attack a movie if they're critically reviewing it and saying it sucks or it's bad for whatever reasons. But no, people were, really scathing in their comments before it even came out. So the aggregator site Rotten Tomatoes decided to shut down comments on this particular film before it actually opened because they were really driving down the percentage of the rating. Right now, it's at about a little over 80% when it comes to critical reviews. When it comes to fan reviews, again, those troll kinds of comments really tend to bring that down, and it's not necessarily reflective of what fans think as a whole. But what's really interesting too, if you haven't heard this one already, YouTube decided to fight the trolls by changing the search engine, the tag. Whenever you looked up Brie Larson, it would be associated with a news item, and so only news associations would come up, like big networks in the U.S., as opposed to individual people. So there's some problems with that too. It's not all great, but it's interesting the lengths that they went to because of clearly the misogyny that's out there.
It's ridiculous, but she's proven them all wrong at the box office.
She's kicking butt.
Thank you, Yelena.
See you soon, Dwight.
A Thornhill family has turned its weekend tradition into a community one with the help of social media. Day Lukacs and her husband would drive around every Sunday hand-delivering homemade care packages to the homeless in Toronto. Now, last month, she decided to post a message on her Facebook page asking if anyone would be interested in helping out. Since that post, the family has received more than 4,000 donated items and have created more than 300 packages with the help of their Thornhill community. The project, now called We Care, will be giving out all those packages next Sunday. And a shout out to my buddy Ian Cooper for letting me know what this wonderful family was doing. Kind of warms your heart as everything warms up out there.
Yeah, no
Good
doubt
on you. All right, so what's happening now? The weird thing there, we had 11 on, I think, Thursday and then one on Friday.
And then one on Friday, it drops off. That's the cold front. We're in this transitional period.
So we haven't turned the corner yet.
We haven't turned the corner yet, but like I said, the bright side of all of this is that we're going to be above zero for our daytime highs for the next 5 days. I'm trying to take the silver lining in all of this thing, right?
Glass half full.
It is still -7 tonight, though. Wind chill making it feel like -14 initially, anyway. 3 degrees tomorrow and sunshine. We talked about that warm-up headed our way. It'll start sort of Wednesday. It'll stay warm through Wednesday night, and then Thursday, 11 degrees. We've got some rain showers in the forecast, but I think the tides are turning
soon. The melt is on the way, man. We need the room. The snow's still taking up room in a lot of neighborhoods. That's our show for tonight. Thank you for watching. We will see you back here tomorrow night at 6. Have a great evening, everybody.